to try out these two mics. Okay, this is mic 3, or this is wireless. Mic 1, you got anything out of this one? This is the SM58. Okay, so I'll just hang out by the door and take text.
There, now I'm on, and good morning. Okay, thank you. Great to see good all you out here, and we've got some very interesting information for you. And welcome to those, besides those that are here, we want to welcome those that are viewing online or seeing us a few days later. I'm Harvey Jager. I chair the Landscape Renewal Task Force, and I'm currently on the property team. The purpose of this presentation is to introduce the Site and Landscaping Master Plan and hear any questions or comments you have. If you are with us online, you should see a prompt on your screen that connects with us, and you can use that to submit a question or a comment. I'd like to, we have two guests that are our landscape architects, consultants, Calix Design Group, Ben Hartberg, stand up, and Hannah Laporte. Okay. We'll kind of break this into two parts. What we're going to be talking about has a fairly long history, kind of longer than I realized. I'll kind of start out by explaining why we need a site plan or master site plan, and then what the property team and the task force have been doing. One thing that's it's a project sometimes that people don't realize why are we doing it. Most of us come in the north door, come in, do our thing. As far as going around the site, it doesn't happen. We walk past it, maybe spend a little while. Maybe have coffee quickly, or not so quickly, when it's outdoors. But unless you're pause and spend a little bit of time, you don't see where some of the problems and where some of the opportunities are on our property beyond the building here. And so anyway, if you do take a few minutes, you do start seeing the things that maybe this could be done differently, or maybe we can improve the function or the beauty of our site. After I go through my spiel, then Hannah and Ben will
keep going.
They will get into the master plan, and then you get to see the fun stuff. First, why are we planning? This goes back to about 2018. The property team realized that there's some significant repairs that needed to be done around the planter on the Snelling's entry side of the building. There were bricks that were cracked, some were missing, parts of the paving has settled, and there was some open joints and places to trip if you weren't being real careful. And this is really a complicated portion of our whole site, I think the most complicated of any area. If you'll bear with me, if you're coming in from the Snelling entry, first you're met by a beautiful planter, nice flowers. Moving outward, each side has a stairway. Moving out a little further, there's a retaining wall that flanks the stair, and a place where you can sit towards the Snelling side. Well, in the middle of all of this, there's an illuminated signboard sticking right in the middle of the planter. And that's quite a combination of functions and elements all in one kind of tight space. And in addition to that area, if you look at the lawn around that area, it just barely survives. It's kind of some grass, a lot of weeds, depending on whether we've had rain or good watering. It could even be looking kind of dry and sandy. Property team at that point, kind of the first thing that was pointed out to us was the brick on the planter, and it did need repair. We had a masonry contractor take a look at that and gave us an estimate. That didn't include handrails, doing anything with the paving, handrails that are on the angled sidewalks that come up to the entry. That was not in their scope of work to estimate to this. And so we got an estimate of about $8,000 just to kind of patch up the planter itself, and that's 5 years ago, so that's probably $14,000-15,000 right now, and that's not doing anything more than that. And another consideration we had was the sign itself. There had been discussions, mostly outside of the property group, about getting a new sign. that can be simple, or it can be something that gets very complex, and where it should be, what do we want it to do. That was just getting kicked around and really not going anywhere, but to the property team, that was kind of having that out there, kind of undecided. Here's the problem with things we need to fix. What comes first? Can we solve one without the other? And that just took a lot of time to evolve. The property team started looking at all the different elements and kind of making guesstimates, is a technical term, of what things would cost. It's all started adding up. And Steve Vieira, who's one of our team members, I don't know if he's here right now, but he suggested that maybe we want to take a broader look. Might make sense, especially financially. He posed the question, if we just repair the planter and the associated elements, it starts adding up to a sizable sum. And the end result would be just same elements repaired, probably good for another 30 years. Or we could take a fresh look at the functions that need to happen in that area, and what type of an experience we want for the congregation, visitors coming for weddings, funerals, whatever, and those people just passing by. We decided to go with the latter, even though it would take more time to implement. We floated the idea of developing a more encompassing plan for Snelling Avenue side and the south side of the property, and to the council and the staff, and we were getting positive response. People say, yeah, that's a good thing to do. Okay, now, I didn't say anything about the north side of the building, and so why not? The parking contract with McAllister runs 8 more years, and we really can't make any changes that would, I think, affect the number of parking spaces without really going through a renegotiation, and that could even affect our use of the parking. And so we just we thought, well, maybe we can do some improvements around the perimeter of the site, but that's something we're saving for the future. And I think tackling the most important area is the Snelling side, second is the south, and if we can do all of that, that's quite a bit. About 2 or 3 years ago, the property team prepared a list of larger capital repairs and improvements that are likely to be needed in the next 10 years. This was one of them. Fortunately, the council included an allocation of funds for capital projects in the capital campaign 7, which I think we're maybe a year plus into that. Anyway, in March of this year, I approached Pastor Cindy and said, I think this is time to move ahead. What made it seem like that's the time? We now have funds to develop a preliminary planning and some budget level estimates. We really, at that point in March, we hadn't really said specifically we need to do this, and what are our goals. So that's something that had to be developed. The Department of Transportation, MnDOT, Minnesota Department of Transportation, and the City of St. Paul has a Snelling Avenue upgrade in their budgeting plan for several years. Their schedule has shifted several times, and they are now set to proceed June, July next year, 2024. And this is a mill and overlay project. They would be doing work at the corners for accessibility, new curbs and gutters, not a major redo of the street, but pretty good. And they'll also be doing work on, that's a MnDOT project at Snelling and and the city is going to be making some changes. I think that's probably access and maybe signals. So a lot is going to be happening here next year. We figured that if we could quickly proceed with our planning, we could better coordinate with MnDOT and the local agencies of, we're doing this here, you doing this, how can we satisfy some needs we have and work with them. And it's got advantages for us and them. The property team also needed, I explained, we needed professional help. A landscape architect would be good to help us do this, and we also needed a group that is a good cross-section of the congregation who could work on this. Pastor Cindy said, let's do this. And task force was formed. There's a range of demographics on this, and we've got two people that were very new members of the church, 1 or 2 years. There's some of us that have been around here for quite a bit longer. We had a college student. We've got a young parent with 2 active children. And if you're here, I'll just list who they are. It's James Codet. If you're here, stand up or wave a hand. Mike Flatford, Sue Clavin, see there, Greta Munt, Ron Struss, and Kelly Wells. So now we got a task force. What have they been doing? We had our first meeting in May, and the initial step was to start identifying our goals and what the project scope should be. We started by listing the things that kind of going around the table. What are the obvious things? From there, we branched it out. One of us met with the staff and asked them, what are the opportunities and you see with the site, and what sort of needs they saw, and we got that information. We also had a listening table session after church where we handed out survey forms with open-ended questions, as well as listened and took notes. We got a lot of comments, and thank you for that. Also thinking about we did some brainstorming about how we can be a public church, and the result was a questionnaire that Sue Clavin developed and delivered to 30 residents along Goodrich and Lincoln. All of the responses were listed and discussed by the task force. We actually had 4 pages of closely spaced text of every comment that was came out of all of that input. There were a lot of commonalities, and we ranked them, consolidated them, and you'll see them in a few minutes. And there are some handouts here too for those right here in this room. Kind of overlapping while we were doing the scope, we began the process of selecting a landscape architectural firm. We started out with a list of about 6 firms, narrowed that down, had some interviews, and ultimately selected the Calyx Design Group as the best qualified firm for our project, and they'll probably tell you a little bit about their firm too. They've got neighborhood roots close by us. In early August, we began a series of meetings with Calyx where we reviewed a number of design concepts and discussed options. Some things fell into place very easily. Some were very complex and difficult, especially the Snelling entry side. What you're going to be seeing from them is only a couple of weeks old. It's really fresh information. I'd like to highlight the scope items, and then after that we'll get into a presentation of plan. Some of these, I'll just go over rather quickly. Some I need to spend a little bit of time explaining them. First off, increasing our visibility, saying more about what we do. Some people don't even see us or even know that it's church, especially depending on the direction you're going. We want to be welcoming. We want to be good neighbors, and this fits in with the public church effort that we have. While there isn't a heavy use of the Snelling entry, it's symbolically important, and but it is important for certain events, as I mentioned earlier, weddings, funerals, when we rent a space out for people like such as this they go to that door, and they also need to go to that door to get the elevator to fully access the building. So it is an important location. One of the things wasn't really on our radar, but one of the members on the task force, who's a new member, he said, from the parking area, and if I were in one of the accessible spots, parking spots, you can't really see the walkway up to the Snelling entry. It's kind of off to the side. There's some plant material in between, and it's hard to see. And that's an important destination because it's the elevator and it's our official accessible point. We also need a gathering space for outdoor events such as coffee hour, worship, etc. Snelling side's kind of noisy, and we felt we should say that right out. We want to avoid that area. We need an area that's level, and if you're a little bit unsteady on your feet, or it needs to be a solid surface right now. It's kind of bumpy grass through that area. And in that area, on the south side, we need a place where kids can be active and safe, and kind of define an area without a fence. Kind of put some boundaries, but not hard, unwelcoming elements. A lot of people just, as they're walking by in Snelling, they stop and maybe want to rest. Maybe on that retaining wall, wherever anyway, but we want to welcome that, and we encourage that. We want to have a design that encourages that. The Peace Pole area, a lot of people really are attached to that, and we said, we think we should keep it. And we could, if there was some compelling reason, maybe we'd have to seriously think about that, but I think nothing has really come up that says that's an inappropriate place or that we can't really handle that. We need a sign. We haven't really defined how detailed that needs to be. We need garden beds, which provide a lot of color. We've had volunteers that tend those, and especially near the entry points where people gather. Shade, sustainability is real important. Easy to maintain. We heard that a number of times, especially from the improvers. There's a bench on the south side that kind of sticks out into the site that Emily said that's got to go. Let's see. Okay, we had some discussion about sculpture and artwork, and figured that really it would probably be better to just avoid that sometime in the future. That maybe other people might decide differently, but we felt we would not really encourage an artwork or sculptural type project. That gets into a whole bunch of other issues of content and quality and other things, but we'd like to be able to accommodate artwork that might be of a more temporary nature, maybe relate to a program that one of the committees or the youth are doing, and that's could be out on the site, but it would have a sort of a sponsorship and a designated time for coming and for going. There was a discussion about having accessible route from Snelling to the front door, kind of visualizing that as kind of being straight on with the door, trying to get that accessible. We acknowledged right in the beginning that we should investigate it, but it looks like it could be quite difficult to do. Get a better system of where we have water sources located, some outlets, particularly on the south side for programs, because we did learn during COVID and that was a good area. We had church services there a couple of times, and that area has been a place that has worked out fairly well for coffee and refreshments in that area. So some outlets would be nice. And then we also feel that trying to simplify things, we had some elements of the site, just because they were complicated, they became kind of hard to manage. Simplicity seems to work better in the long run, and sort of a simple, when there's choices, let's see if we can do it the simple, beautiful, durable way. So at this point, are there any questions or comments about the what and the why of what we've been doing? Yeah.
Was the stormwater runoff, was that something that you guys looked at? Is there an issue with that? I don't know.
Question was asked if stormwater runoff is an issue. Not really. No, that hasn't really come up as an issue. I think what we do need to be conscious of draining water away from the building. Our parking lot, most of the drainage that way does go off to the streets. If this were a new building, that would be a bigger issue, but it really isn't right now. Any remote ones? Okay.
I just think that one of those first points, making the route clear for accessible parking, is extremely important. At the Ludicrous dinner, there was, as you know, a lot of people that had issues with stairs that were in attendance. And there were comments from people they did not know about the accessibility to the elevator and those front doors until they were already here and had already wrestled with the steps coming out of the parking lot. So, I think that's really important.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure if that picked up online. The comment was that access from our accessible parking areas and just the parking areas in general into the building is really important. And the Ludafish dinner a couple of days ago, there were examples of the need for that. And my wife even mentioned, Lane mentioned that people coming in the north door, and one was saying, gee, it'd be nice to church have an elevator. Well, we do have, but I agree it's not important, or it's not apparent. And so part of the charge to the architects is we need to make that better. And you'll see later how that was addressed. Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Now we get to the good stuff. I'll turn it over to Ben and Hannah. If you have trouble understanding what you're seeing on the screen, point it out. Sometimes they might be referring to some things, and we've got this over here and that over here, and we'll be pointing those things out. But if you get lost or have trouble understanding that, just say something right away. And towards the, after that program is, or we've gone through the master plan, there's another opportunity for comments and questions addressed to either Ben or Hannah, or if it's, or to me if it's more related to Immanuel. But
Morning, folks. Morning. How are you? Good. As Harvey mentioned, my name is Ben Hartberg, and I'm a landscape architect. I've got a small office right here in St. Paul. We're north of Merriam Park on Cleveland, and as he mentioned as well, I have some local roots. My wife and kids and I used to live right behind the old St. Clair boiler. I miss that place, especially the shakes, the malts. So this used to be our neighborhood. We used to walk all the time. Our kids and dog. We used to go through McAllister and come by Immanuel all the time. So I have local roots and context, and I've also seen Snelling grow up and evolve over the last 25 years, from baby trees and Ford truck traffic to a lot of intense vehicle traffic, a lot more buses, and really big trees. We're excited to be part of this master plan because the master plan really is a guide. It's simply a snapshot. It's a collection of concerns, thoughts, put into a graphic form. The cement trucks aren't showing up tomorrow. No one's going to tear things apart. But it does help when it's time to look at something and say, we got to do something. It's great to go to a master plan, a guide, and say, this is what we talked about before. Is this still relevant? Is some of it relevant? All those things are very, very helpful. So please don't think that what you're about to see is going to happen right away. Again, it's for you to look at. You have a small site. You have a relatively compact site, so it has to work hard. It has to do a lot of things. It has to hold your cars. It has to hold your events. I think you guys do the lutefisk. You guys have some summer camps. It's got to do a lot of things. And so we take a look at it from a slightly different lens. People say, well, what's a landscape architect? Well, plants are only a very small part of what we do. I've got a horticulture background, but it's also engineering and a ton of architecture. So while an architect designs buildings like this, we design everything else. The parking, the paving, signage, your circulation, your seating. We work on all kinds of projects, medical projects, large institutional projects, public safety centers. We do all kinds of things. So we're always looking at how do people interact with the site? How do they find where they're trying to go? How can they safely get there? And how can the site be flexible? How can you design it so that it can be used for more than one purpose? So we want to be respectful of everybody's time. We know you've been sitting in church for a while, so we'll go through this rather quickly, but I will say if there are questions at the end, just save them for the end because I might actually answer your question as we go. But let's jump through it. I'm a very visual person as a landscape architect. Hannah's a landscape architect as well. So she went ahead and built a complete 3D model of your church by hand. So you will not, it isn't going to be perfect to the brick, but it should help you see what we see. It should help you go, oh, there's the entrance. Oh, hey, that's the window I look out at church. Those types of things are going to help you. So we're going to get into a quick conversation about, Harvey already went through some of the things that we're trying to do. Lack of clear accessible routes, routes to the door, need a safe space for kids to play. Snelling's a very busy road, trust me. My son would launch T-balls into it all the time, and the number of wrecks I would hear at the St. Clair and Snelling intersection, wow. Especially when they wake you up at 2 in the morning, because one of them went through the St. Paul Corner Drugs window. And of course, things are dated. I say this all the time. Yeah, they weren't happy about it either. I couldn't get ice cream for 3 weeks. I was upset. Everything ages. Nature isn't nice, especially in an urban environment. The pavement ages, salt that we need so we don't slip and fall, because I'm not a native Minnesotan, my wife is, and she's like, it's just like this in the winter. I said, it's just really treacherous. Things age. Pavement ages, grass, trees, plants, just like paint and carpet and blinds. It takes on wear and age, and it needs to be replaced. Well, landscape really isn't much different. So we look at it the same way. It's also a chance to make a change, a twist, an adjustment, maybe make it a little more modern or more contemporary. Design is a very iterative process. And by that I mean it's an idea, it's a meeting, okay, there has to be changes. We've been working with the committee since July on this iterative process. This isn't all just our brain dump, here you go. It's very much influenced by the committee because it's your church. It's not our church. So we want that input because it's critical to shape this the way that the committee who represents the larger mass sees the site going. So we define, we collect, then we kind of brainstorm, we develop plans, we get feedback, we improve it, and back again we go. So you're looking at the culmination of 3 different rounds of ideas and tweaks and adjustments. So really quickly, I mean, Harvey already touched on a lot of this, just so you know where you are. You're sitting roughly right here. The parking lot, and to answer the question about stormwater, this isn't an acre of land. So you can do whatever you want and you don't tip the threshold for having to do Capital Region watershed. It's just not enough land mass disturbance. The parking is grandfathered, it is what it is. The only way you could ever do stormwater management would be an underground tank system. And based on the reaction of the last person that had to have a tank system put in, they thought they could probably launch a rocket into space for less money. So I would say for now, we're just gonna leave this alone. And leave that for a separate discussion. But obviously, with your accessible parking here, and everything down and around is what you're going to see. This is what we looked at. When we say Snelling, this is the west side, and a Goodrich, of course, is the south side. Working with the committee, we really broke it into 3 areas. We have that focus, the front entry, your front door, some accessible route to get a route around the building without going through the building, and then of course the south lawn. You know, we wanted it to be welcome and accessible, safe, flexible, and above all, beautiful. We did not pick specific plants. We did not go and say that's a daylily and that's a euonymus. This is simply a vision, a view of what it could be, and I'm sure you're going to have some questions, but we hope you like what you see. I am going to have Hannah Lepresto step up and go through her plans that she helped develop and walk you through the process.
Hi everybody, I'm Hannah. So you are now looking at the 3D model, so some snapshot images taken from that model. So we're going to start with a plan view. So just like the view Ben had just shown of your existing conditions, this one is now showing some proposed new elements. So I'll go down the list A through L. So we'll start with letter A is the proposed monument sign location. So right now you've got it in the middle of your stairs here, but we're proposing it to move it north up off to the side so you still get great visibility from Snelling, but it's not blocking your grand entry to the beautiful facade right there at the front of your church. Letter B is the proposed formal entry stair and planters. So a little bit different from what you have now, where the stair is brought right to the center, and then the planters on either side. C, proposed lawn space. So with some thinning and removing of some aging or diseased trees, we can bring some more sunlight in, which will really help that lawn space be able to thrive much more than currently with a more shaded condition. Letter D is the proposed entry accent paving. So as you come up the main stairs, right here, we're proposing the idea of could be a different integral color concrete or possibly a stamped pattern, could be pavers. At this point, we're not defining the specific type of paving, but just noting that that could be a different accent area to really highlight your main entry. Letter E is a proposed accessible pathway to the north parking lot. So right now, you've got a path that's a little bit at a diagonal that Harvey had mentioned before is going to be a little hard for people to find from the accessible stalls. So letter E is a very direct route straight from the stalls to the front door. Letter F is also a proposed accessible path. So that one is completely new. It would connect the front entry all the way to the Goodrich entry. So there's an accessible path without having to go all the way down to the Snelling sidewalk. Letter G, proposed foundation plantings. So that's a general item to refresh some of the aged plantings along at the base of the building. Letter H is the existing peace pole to remain. So Harvey mentioned that that's an important element to your church community, so that is the element that would stay in place. Letter I is a proposed large group patio. It's shown sized roughly to 750 square feet. So that's located on the Goodrich side, tucked into the building here, right off of the entrance to the building. So you could get here on the accessible path from the outside or from that entry there. Letter J, proposed movable lawn furniture. This was an element we discussed with the task force as a very simple but effective way to encourage neighbors or passersby to use the lawn area. It could be left out all the time, you could take it inside, but just a nice flexible element to have. Letter K is a proposed low perimeter hedge. So as Harvey mentioned, we weren't looking to use a fence to create much of a barrier between you and the neighborhood, but it would be really nice to have an edge condition to keep kids safe if they're playing with balls so things don't fly into the street. And then it also creates a nice formal edge to your property. Letter L is proposed compact tree. So you currently have an existing tree up in this area, and in order to get the accessible path directly from the ADA parking to the front door, that tree would have to be removed. So we're proposing to replace it with one in a more compact form to allow more sun to reach your lawn, and also to fit nicely against the building without covering it up too much. And then at the key at the bottom, you'll see the yellow arrow is showing the accessible route to and from the front entry. So if you needed an accessible route and you had essentially come from the bottom of the stairs here or from the front entry at the top, because there's a staircase here, you would go north to where the ADA parking is, and you could use the connecting sidewalk to get back down to the Snelling sidewalk. All right, so now we're going to move into more perspective views of the model, so you can see each of those areas in a little more detail. So here we have an aerial view from Snelling Avenue of the front entry. So you'll see the new staircase right in the center, flanked by planters on either side. We've also got the new monument sign shown to the left-hand side of the image. And then the accessible pathway coming from the accessible parking to the front door. So this shot here, again, the view from Snelling, but looking directly at the doors. So you can see we've still got a very symmetrical entry there. But the sign is moved off to the side so it doesn't block views. If there's going to be wedding photos at the stair, it's a great opportunity for that without being blocked by the sign itself. This view you can see a little more clearly. Here's the signs where the accessible parking stalls would be. So that connecting path straight up to the doors.
It's worth mentioning, Hannah, too, that the City of St. Paul signage regulations have changed drastically since you built your sign out front. So it has to be moved to the setback location shown. And this is also proposed to have a changeable LED message aspect. So you could advertise upcoming lutefisk, you could church service, special times for holidays, et cetera, et cetera. And so anyway, that's one of the main reasons it's located there, is because that's now where the city will allow it to occur.
Yep, and so when Ben mentions a setback, so that's why the sign's back here, and it couldn't be like right up against that sidewalk. That's a city requirement that has to be pushed back.
And Hannah, why don't you mention the sidewalk along the accessible parking too?
Oh, that it's going back. I guess, yeah, it would be cut off here, but there's a sidewalk. I think you're talking about this one here in front of these signs. It would just continue straight and then connect to the Snelling Avenue sidewalk. So you could come directly from there or go up the ramp to the front doors. So another shot of the monument sign, and here in the corner we have some of the regulations from the city listed there, just so you have an idea of where that's coming from. So the sign can't be higher than 8 feet tall. It has to be located 10 feet from the property line, which is right along the Snelling Avenue sidewalk. Then we've got the dynamic display shown. That would have to be monochromatic. And there are some restrictions to the total display area as well. But since you have so much street frontage, you have plenty. Yeah. And this is the view from the proposed entry planter along Snelling. So just looking back in a different direction, looking more towards where your parking lot is, you can see a little better that sidewalk coming from the accessible parking stalls over to the Snelling Avenue sidewalk. The planters on either side of the stairs are sized so that even though there's no formal bench over there, people passing by could still take a little step in, and those planters are at seat height, so people could sit there. Material-wise, we matched the planter material, that stone face you see there, to the base of the monument sign to have some cohesive materials there. And these planters could be filled with perennials that come back every single year, but there's also opportunity to put annuals in part of them as well. This is probably the best shot to be able to see the sidewalk connection there. So from your north door entry, there's a sidewalk connecting directly to Snelling, as well as up that ramp to the front doors. So now we're shifting down to the Goodrich entry. So here we're focusing in on that new proposed patio that was about 750 square feet. So that's located just off to the side of that entry, kind of tucked into where the building cuts in. We're showing some movable furniture out there that, again, you could leave out there or you could bring it inside. This area could be used for your coffee hour. It's also oriented in a way where if there's outdoor worship, it could be used for that too if people brought lawn chairs. But it still preserves a significant amount of lawn space for activities for Vacation Bible School, people that want to kick a soccer ball around. There's still plenty of lawn space there. Even as you cross that sidewalk, lawn continues over there as well. You can also see the hedge here continues along Goodrich to keep balls from falling into the street, but there's also specific gaps left in the hedge to still encourage people as they're walking by, that show them that they're welcome to come in. So just a different angle. So as if you're standing in Goodrich looking at this patio. You can see the bright red chairs in the lawn too. It's just another option to have movable furniture out there for people to hang out in. This view is at the corner where Snelling and Goodrich meet. You can see that hedge, create a safer lawn space there. And then you have a little less tree coverage down this area for more sunlight to hit the turf.
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
Go back a couple, 3 slides.
Sure, I think. This one?
No.
More?
Okay, there. As you, that couple, if they went left, is that going to be an entryway with a grade?
Yep, yeah, so that's your existing north entry door. Yep, so you could walk in there. It's just that that's not an accessible entry because once you walk in there, there's steps. So if you had a...
It seems to me that door is you walk east. That doorway hasn't changed? No. Okay, that perception is.
Yep, yeah, just an existing door there. Yep. All right, so this view is in the patio itself, looking back out towards Goodrich. So you can get a better sense of some of the space that there is there to have quite a few tables and chairs, the lawn space beyond, and then the hedge that separates the lawn from the sidewalk. All right, so this is our last slide. So this is a summary, again, an image you've already seen of that front entry. So just going back to those key elements that we wanted to focus on of creating a site and campus that's really welcoming for parishioners, but also visitors, neighbors, and passersby. We wanted to create some clear and direct accessible routes to connect the building's front entry from the parking lot and the Goodrich Avenue building entry. A safe outdoor lawn space for children and families to play is framed by a low landscape hedge around the perimeter. A flexible outdoor patio adjacent to Goodrich supports Immanuel's variety of activities and events, including coffee hour and outdoor worship. Fresh paving, hardy perennial landscaping, and accents of natural stone come together to form a beautiful site that is manageable to maintain, with key opportunities for specialty plantings and annuals. So with that, I think we're going to open it up to questions. Yes.
I have two questions from someone online,
Okay.
from the same person. The first question has to do with the monochrome sign. And also, if you would repeat my question. Because
Yes, absolutely.
The question about the monochrome signage. They asked, how is it that the church down the street, they display with a full-color monument display?
Sure. Okay, so the question was about the monochromatic display of the monument sign, that the current city code states that it needs to be monochromatic, but there is a church down the street that does not use a monochromatic sign. I don't know why they can, but it's possible that the code has changed, and sometimes if you had done something when that was allowed when the code was different, you get grandfathered in and you can continue to do so. So it's possible that the code has changed since then, and now they're restricted to monochromatic signs. But it is always something that you could ask the city about and bring up that there's a precedent down the street.
I had one more question.
Mm-hmm.
What are the plans for landscape lighting and pathway lighting?
So the question was about landscape lighting and pathway lighting, if there's a plan for that. So at this level in a master plan, we don't go into that much detail. That's something that would really come at the next stage. And other things that would be in that stage are like selecting specific materials. Lighting falls into there. Irrigation is another item that falls into there. So right now we're just looking at major space planning. What kind of activities happen where? How big might a patio be? But specific elements like that would kind of come at the next step. Yes.
Question, but I just like all of these elements that you got presented here. I think very, very well done.
Thank you. That's very kind.
Yeah, I'd like to just add a comment here about the lighting. I think we do have a few areas, like the walkway that comes from the accessible parking. Towards the, as you go northward, it's kind of dark until you get into the parking lot. We've got a lot of ambient lighting, but there's just a few select areas that don't have it. I think on stairs, we've got a few stairs in front. Those need to have some lighting by code. But we're kind of almost marginal. We got quite a bit of street lighting there too, still, but that's the sort of thing that we need to be careful about.
Yes.
I'm a little concerned about the lack of accessibility from Snelling Street, that curb bump out directly to the door.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if it would be possible to do something that goes around the side of the planters or something like that. A person that gets dropped off by transportation services at the front has to make it all the way to the parking lot, up and back.
Yep.
And that could be a hindrance.
Yes. So the question was about an accessible pathway from Snelling to the front door. So where we had shown this yellow symbol with the arrow, so the question was regarding if you get dropped off at this vehicle turn off, and you need an accessible entry to the front door, you do have to make this large U to get to the front door. Is there a way to make an accessible entry directly from that vehicle turnoff up to the front entry? The answer is yes, it's possible. We did take a look at some ramp concepts that go around the planter, but that's something that the task force discussed and weighed different options, maintenance, and maybe Harvey, would you like to speak to some of the decisions behind that?
Yeah, that's something we've struggled with quite a bit. There was a number of different options or efforts in terms of getting a ramp, not so much from that pullout, but from the sidewalk up to the front door, and they all got long and very complicated, and you almost kind of, a lot of schemes, to really look good, they had to be kind of symmetrical, and you're duplicating ramps. That drop-off is kind of a tough issue. For Metro Mobility, they are, it's not a, they have records on, or they have information that for a person going to Immanuel Lutheran Church, they should be dropped off at the north entry in the parking lot. Not all drivers are that conscientious or alert or even aware of that, but that's something that is the official place that they should drop off. As far as it's not an accessible parking spot, it's, you could park there, but it's not an accessible, it's a very dangerous place to try and get out if you're transferring to a wheelchair or any other balance issues if you're a driver, and it's even more dangerous. And we really want to kind of downplay that as an accessible entry point, and really what's beyond, I guess there's sort of what's legally required, and then we want to usually go beyond, but we are getting good access from the disability parking spots is kind of the number one thing, and then kind of getting people to the elevator is also very important. But it's an issue there that I guess we like the turnout, and we've had discussions with MnDOT about it. They're going to be leaving it just about the way it is. Their ADA specialist thought this was good, very good. And they realize the problems of trying to make that a real serious drop-off point.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What's the timeline on this? When do we think about doing this, or what's the next step for that?
I would hope that we can get to definite plans early 2004 and be under construction in spring. That's my goal. But we'll have to be looking at the budget situation. I think we're in the ballpark. We've got some rough figures. I think we're in the ballpark, but I have to be talking with the finance team people and probably the council to see if, the big bills aren't going to come until middle of the summer when the work is actually taking place, and so we need to coordinate that. But just even having a definitive plan helps us work together with MnDOT, because we want to do this, they want to do that, and be ready for that.
Yeah, we're almost out of time. Obviously, you said we wanted to be respectful, but let's try to get to a couple last questions.
I have two questions from Paul online. One is, will all lawns have easy access for mowing and watering?
So yes, all lawns will have easy access for mowing and watering. One of the reasons we're proposing to take down the 2 maple trees that are out there is because Snelling Avenue is big and it's only getting bigger. MnDOT has no plans to take on those trees that are out in the right-of-way. So you're only going to get more shade and less visibility. The 2 maple trees also suffer from trunk rot, which is a kind of a condition of red maples when there isn't enough iron in the soil because there's too much clay. So removing those trees, the one up by the accessible parking is really close to the building, and it's rotted. So our goal is to provide access into all the lawn spaces so you can walk in and out. Obviously, mowing is part of that equation.
Second part of the question is, if you can't do everything on this plan, are there priorities assigned to certain features?
I think there are. I think Harvey and the committee really made it clear where some of their priorities were. The landscaping, of course, is something that can be done phased over time. That's certainly, the biggest damage is going to be when you are digging out for paving and sidewalks, digging out for footings. So I think that there's definitely a way to package this, again, in that iterative sense where things are done. And there's even probably some opportunities for volunteering, whether items are donated or whether some of you want to put on gardening gloves and help. I think there's definitely those options available. I know there's a question over here that's been patient.
Just wondering if there's any options or if you guys have any experience with heated sidewalks on section E to help with handicap accessibility. We track a lot of salt and sand
Yep.
into the church, and we also put a lot of salt and sand in the lawn, in the flower beds, because of what we try, how we're trying to make it.
The answer is yes. We deal with in-slab heat. Oh, sorry. So the question was, is there any opportunity to heat the sidewalk for the main walkway from the parking lot to the north entry? And the answer is yes. It's becoming increasingly popular. We've put it in many municipal sites. So city halls, Dakota County, the Justice Center, where we have lots of traffic, lots of attorneys coming in and out, right? Last thing they want to do is slip and fall. You want to talk about a group that's concerned. But I would say that really depends on your heater. Assumingly you have, I see baseboard heat, you have radiators, so you have a boiler. So the process is pretty straightforward, but it can be a bit expensive. But as somebody who owns and operates it, it'll pay you back with the lack of damage and you simply don't need to show up and shovel. Sensors right in the cement will tell you time to turn on. It uses the waste or uses the water coming back from the radiator into a heat exchanger, warms it up and sends it outside. And inside it's a glycol. It's like a super antifreeze. Heats up the sidewalk, and it usually keeps the sidewalk at about 34, 35 degrees all winter long. So ice doesn't form, and snow begins to melt as soon as it hits it. So yes, that's definitely an option. It does add some money to the price package, but I would say yes, that's definitely a good thing to consider, and it definitely provides a lot of peace of mind for the slip and fall. Yes, ma'am.
Couple of quick questions. One, I think it's important to have more than just ambient lighting around the side. I'm part of the improvers now, and we do find liquor bottles and little ones because we're on a busy street.
Right.
That's just the reality of it. So, and we help with our security cameras. So on the
Okay.
south side, there's some beautiful lighting because something like that could just attract more of an element that we're aware of.
We did provide a lighting allowance. We did a rough cost opinion, which is basically our idea of what some of these could cost. We did put a lighting allowance in, and that would be for pedestrian scale lights, so probably 10-foot tall lights that could also have cameras. A very popular option now is to do motion sensing, so they dim down really low, and as soon as there's motion, they brighten up for a certain amount of time. And it's become a very good way of dissuading people from loitering or thinking that they can, get in your area because it will light up bright as day. So I think that's a very valid point, and I think that that's certainly something that would play into the first series of drawings, construction drawings, when that happens.
Thank you. And the other positive thing is, our front doors, it's always an issue to not have the snow and the leaves come through. We've never, could we please have beautiful new doors to go with this gorgeous plan?
I'll put that in Harvey's court. Front doors.
Front doors, could we please have, yeah.
Okay. I know people who might be offended by what you say. Should I?
One last question in the back. No, you're right, and that's, you have it now. And as Herbert mentioned, it's MnDOT's property. And there's one thing I've learned in all my years of doing this is you just don't cross paths with MnDOT. especially from my aspect. You just leave their stuff alone. Now, they have been very, very nice to your church. They have been very nice and welcoming and welcome. Harvey mentioned that their handicap accessible specialist came out, and that individual is actually paralyzed. He's in a wheelchair. So when he's looking at MnDOT's sensitivity to accessibility, you can believe they're going to listen to him. So if you have the bump out now, if you give it up, you will never get it back, ever. Once you have it, it's yours in perpetuity. The minute you let go of it, you cannot get it back in 20 years when they do redo snelling. That doesn't work that way. So it's a good idea to keep it because it's still your legal address, Snelling Avenue. So you still will get the occasional truck, a UPS driver, the occasional Metro Mobility person. Completely understand, but I will tell you that with MnDOT's plans for Snelling, traffic calming is another key piece of what they're trying to do. They're trying to introduce items to slow cars down. I used to live right off Snelling. That was my side yard. I know how fast people drive. I know how fast the police drive when they go by at 2 in the morning. Like, dangerously fast. So I will say that MnDOT has plans to change the light timing as well as introduce traffic calming because honestly, pedestrians, you take your life into your own hands trying to cross Snelling. I know, believe me, I know. So I would say that it's a good idea to keep it, but again, just keep encouraging people to use your lot for drop-off for people in a wheelchair.
Yeah, I want to just add, though, that that was put in at our request. It really didn't function as we had planned. This is, I don't know, quite a ways back, anyway. Wasn't directly involved, but I hear the stories about it. But anyway, we do see it used quite a bit for deliveries. The delivery vans, the UPS trucks, they get bigger and bigger. Our parking lot, it can get kind of tight moving a big vehicle through that. So I think they're probably looking at the easiest way to make a delivery. And then for flea market times, there's quite a bit of, number of people. Well, I bought a sofa or a bed and I want to pull it. Can I pull up and we'll load it here? Seasonal thing too. City of St. Paul or MnDOT, whoever does the plowing, they just leave the snow in there all winter. So it's not even an all year round spot.
One more question.
Are there any elements of this that would be beautiful in the winter?
Absolutely. No, that's a great question, and this is something that we as an office really look at. A lot of the plants that you'll see that have come through the graphics will be there in the winter. We 100% believe in seasonal interest. I was born and raised in California. My wife is a Minnesotan, and I said, why is it so plain here? And she's like, well, why don't you do something about it? Well, okay, that's a great idea. So we are looking at plants that provide some wildlife food, as well as have some strong winter interest. But these are also plants that are very easy to maintain. I mean, you literally can knock them down with a weed whipper in the spring, and that's the end of it. They're not high maintenance plants. But they are also plants that are in our graphic for an urban condition. You have non-atomized diesel. You might not even realize it, but I used to have to spray my house down every spring, and it would just run black because of all the diesel that would stick to my house. You don't even kind of realize it, but exhaust, things like that begin to really plug pores of plants, and that's why you'll see time over time they just get less leaves and less leaves. It's what happens. You get a lot of urban pollution. In the spring, you should spray all your plants down. I mean, you might think I'm crazy, but especially if you have broadleaf evergreens or even evergreen shrubs, spray them down with water in May. It's the best thing you can do for them. But we did pick plants that have seasonal interest. It's really important.
One last question.
There, I'm back.
Are rain gardens be an irrigation thing? I would be interested. I've heard that our boulevards are really hard to maintain the grass. And I'm wondering if the boulevards could become a rain garden.
Rain gardens and a boulevard are kind of tricky. I would say on Goodrich is a better chance than on Snelling because, again, that's MnDOT's property. They're not keen on that kind of thing. You have a lot of very superficial roots from those trees, and so a rain garden is going to be difficult. Goodrich is a great candidate, though, and could easily be something that you implement. Again, that's just a very shallow depression where water is encouraged to go and infiltrate. But I would say you probably can't do it on Snelling, but you could on Goodrich, and that's a nice other community element to have. Yep.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Hannah and Ben, and see you.